Before my girlfriend Jenny and I officially started dating, we were already inseparable. We spent nearly all our free time together, and one of the biggest things we bonded over was snowboarding. Her family owned a small cabin-style house in Vermont, tucked deep in the mountains, not far from Stowe Mountain Resort. One weekend, probably around the 10th time we'd ever hung out, she invited me to go up there with her. It would be our first snowboarding trip together. Just the two of us. The drive took about 5 hours. As we got closer, civilization slowly disappeared. The last stretch of the drive was nearly 30 minutes along a narrow, winding road that cut through dense forests. Every now and then we passed the driveway leading off into the trees, most of them barely visible and blocked by snow-covered branches. Walls of pine surrounded us on both sides, and the higher we climbed, the quieter everything became. By that point, seeing another car felt rare, almost surprising. Most of the houses up there, Jenny explained, belonged to people from out-of-state vacation homes. Many sat empty for most of the year, which explained why so few driveways had tire tracks. The isolation was beautiful, but also unsettling in a way I couldn't quite place. I was driving cautiously, around 30 miles an hour, when Jenny suddenly told me to slow down. I hit the brakes just as a small opening in the trees appeared, something I definitely would have missed if she hadn't warned me. We turned onto a narrow, snow-covered trail, switched into four-wheel drive, and slowly made our way to the cabin. The house was small, but looked incredibly cozy, blanketed in snow like something out of a postcard. We parked, unloaded our bags, and immediately turned on the heat. Inside, it had electricity and heating, but no running water. Her family kept large jugs of water for washing hands and dishes, but there was no working toilet. Instead, there was an outhouse outside. That first night, it was already getting dark by the time we settled in. We cooked dinner with the food we'd packed, curled up on the couch, and watched The Pursuit of Happiness. Snow fell steadily outside at some point during the second movie. We both passed out. We woke up early the next morning to our alarms, excited to get fresh powder on the mountain. After breakfast, I realized I had to use the bathroom. Not wanting to deal with the outhouse just yet, I stepped onto the deck and peed into the snow. As I walked toward the outhouse afterward, I noticed something that made me pause. Footprints in the snow. They were fairly large, but I couldn't tell if they were boot prints or animal tracks. Curious, I followed them. They wrapped around the cabin and disappeared into the woods. I called Jenny outside to look. She glanced at them briefly and shrugged, saying it was probably a black bear. She told me they were common in the area. That explanation made sense. So I brushed it off, finished up, and we headed to the resort. We spent nearly 8 hours snowboarding that day. By the time we finished, we were exhausted but happy. We grabbed dinner at a diner and drove back to the cabin. After dark, snow was falling again, thicker now, and the forest felt even more closed in. Back at the cabin, we lit a fire, cranked the heat, blasted music, and started drinking. Eventually, the alcohol caught up with me. I had to pee again, and since I was already putting on boots, I figured I'd just use the outhouse this time. The snowstorm had picked up when I stepped outside. I jogged to the outhouse and slammed the door shut to keep the snow from blowing in. I could still hear the music blasting from inside the cabin, but then, underneath it, I heard something else. Footsteps crunching slowly through the snow. "Jenny," I yelled. No answer. The footsteps kept moving, passing the outhouse. I pulled out my phone and tried texting her, asking if she was outside, but the message wouldn't send right away. Reception was terrible up there. A few minutes passed. I was just finishing when suddenly the music cut off. Total silence. No wind. No music, just a soft sound of snow hitting the ground. When I stepped out of the outhouse, it was pitch black. The cabin lights were off. My first thought was that the power had gone out. I turned on my phone flashlight and immediately noticed fresh footprints in the snow, leading straight toward the house. I followed them to the front door. They stopped there, then continued around the side of the cabin. My heart started racing. I banged on the door and shouted Jenny's name. Suddenly, the door flew open and an arm yanked me inside. Jenny slammed it shut, locked it, and pulled me close. Shaking, she whispered that, while I was outside, a man had tried to open the door. She'd locked it immediately, realizing whoever it was wasn't me. Terrified, she shut off the power and hid in the living room, watching as a stranger slowly walked past the window. Peering inside only minutes later, I had come back. Jenny told me about a hidden cellar in the floor. One, her father used to store rifles and a shotgun. Using my flashlight, I lifted the hatch and climbed down. Grabbing one of the guns from the wall, we sat on the couch in total darkness, not daring to turn the lights back on. The nearest neighbors were far away, and Jenny was certain none of them were around. The snow outside muffled every sound. Then we heard it again, footsteps, slow, deliberate. I loaded the gun, walked to the front door, and threw it open. I fired 3 shots into the air and screamed as loud as I could. The footsteps stopped instantly. We never heard them again. The next morning, on her father's advice, we left immediately. He said it was better not to stay there for a while. Nothing valuable was there. But whoever that was clearly knew the cabin was empty most of the time. We did get 1 full day of snowboarding out of the trip, but that night remains burned into my memory. Beautiful, silent, and absolutely terrifying. This happened in England during the winter of 2018. Back when we had one of the heaviest snowfalls in years, I used to love snow after that winter. I don't anymore that weekend. My immediate family was supposed to visit extended relatives. In Cornwall, I didn't get along with them and really didn't want to go. So I did something stupid. I faked being sick. I didn't expect it to work. But it did. They left without me and trusted me to stay home alone. I was 16 at the time, so it wasn't irresponsible. And honestly, I was excited. Saturday went perfectly at first. I spent the day on my computer, watched Netflix, and played outside in the snow with my dog. She loved it more than anything, bounding through the drifts like she'd never been happier. By evening, I felt relaxed and comfortable being on my own. Later that night, I was finishing a mission on Call of Duty. 12 when hunger finally hit me. The house was full of food, but all of it required effort, actual cooking. I decided instead to walk to the fish and chip shop in the village. By then, it was dark. The snow had stopped falling, but it lay thick and untouched on the ground. I shoved a tenner into my pocket, pulled on my coat, and stepped outside. The quickest route to the chippy took me through a narrow, tree-lined snicket. A few street lamps provided weak light before it opened up near the main road. By the time I got my food, chips, and a battered sausage, it was fully dark on the way back. About halfway through the snicket, I heard it a snap. It came from the trees to my right. I turned quickly, heart thudding, but saw nothing. I tried to convince myself it was just an animal, until I heard it again, 2 sharp snaps, close together. Fear crept in fast. I started walking quicker, gripping the bag of food when I remembered what lay ahead. The last stretch of the snicket, that section was almost pitch black. One of the street lamps had been broken for months, and no one had bothered to fix it. I hesitated, sighed, and kept going. That's when the snapping stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then came something worse. Crunching footsteps. I froze and turned around. Under the glow of the distant street lamp, I saw a black silhouette further down the snicket, a figure running straight at me. I didn't think I ran. I burst through the end of the snicket and sprinted the short distance to my house, only about 10 meters away. I had my keys out before I reached the door. I slammed inside, locked it, and leaned against it, gasping for air when I looked out through the glass. The street was empty, silent. No movement. I tried to calm myself, telling myself I'd imagined it, but it didn't end there. Paranoia kept me awake. Near midnight, my dog suddenly started barking. Violent, frantic barking, scratching at the back door. I knew deep down what she was reacting to, but I didn't want to believe it. I went to the back door. It was too dark to see anything. So I flicked on the outside light. Nothing. The garden looked empty. I dragged my dog away and went back to the living room, trying to relax, but something felt wrong. I couldn't place it at first until it hit me. There were footprints in the snow leading to the back door. My footprints. I hadn't come in through the back door. My blood turned cold as I moved toward it. I felt cold air against my face. I stopped dead. The back door was wide open. The layout of my house meant anyone inside could go straight to the living room, the kitchen, or upstairs. As I backed slowly against the wall, I heard it, a soft, unmistakable thump upstairs. That was enough. I grabbed my dog, snatched my phone, and ran to my neighbor's house. It was midnight, and I rang their bell over and over until they answered. Furious, until they saw my face and heard what I was saying. They let me in immediately. The police took around 40 minutes to arrive due to the snow, which had started falling again. They searched the house thoroughly, but found nothing. The fresh snow had erased any footprints, but the CCTV told the real story. It showed a figure running out of my back door. Shortly after I had arrived home, hopping the fence at the end of the garden, and disappearing into the woods behind the house. Knowing he got away and knowing he knows where I live still haunts me. I sleep better now we replaced the locks. But for a long time afterward, I lived with constant fear for myself and for my family. And every time it snows, that fear comes creeping back.